This happened a few months ago. I was a night shift nurse at an old hospital. I took the job to pay off some debts. The place had a creepy vibe. The fluorescent lights flickered, and the air smelled like antiseptic. I was used to working nights, but this hospital felt different. On my third shift, I sat at the nursing station, staring at the monitors. It was too quiet. I thought I heard faint whispers coming from the pediatric wing, but I brushed it off as tiredness. I shook my head and took a sip of cold coffee. I couldn't let my mind wander. The next night, things changed. The whispers returned. They sounded clearer, almost like soft giggles. I felt a chill creep down my spine. I walked toward the pediatric wing, but the door was locked. I paused. Was I really hearing things, or was there something I didn't understand? Still, my feet didn't want to pull away. As the weeks went on, the whispers grew louder. They felt like laughter mixed with cries. I saw shadows flicker just out of the corner of my eye, especially late at night. It made me uneasy. I told myself it was normal for tired nurses to hear things that weren't there. After all, there were no kids in that wing anymore. One night, around 3 a.m., I heard a ball bouncing against the floor. The sound echoed through the hallway. I felt cold. I crept toward the noise, almost unable to fight the pull. Standing outside the locked door, I expected to see a child waiting for me. I felt a twisted sense of duty to help, but fear wrapped around my throat like a tight rope. That's when I saw it. A shadow darted past the window. My heart raced. It felt like someone wanted me to come in. I heard a voice call my name. Jonah. I froze. It felt like my own name was being spun from a precious memory. I turned to walk away, but my legs didn't obey. Then I heard them again, the whispers. This time they were loud enough to make my skin crawl. "Help us," a gentle voice begged. My breath quickened. I stood there, unsure. I needed to leave, to forget this place and its horrors. But something pulled me closer. I stood frozen, questioning everything. Was I losing my sanity? Or was the hospital itself alive, taunting me with spirits long gone? I couldn't take it anymore. I turned back to the door, my resolve wavering. Just as I reached for the handle, a soft voice repeated, "Help us." It was a plea filled with desperation. I felt a pull from my own past, something I couldn't quite grasp. My gut twisted. I was about to confront the whispers that haunted me all those nights. They might reveal something I didn't want to see, something that would change everything I thought I knew about my role as a nurse. As I stood there, the shadows loomed closer, urging me to step inside once more. But what would I find? Would I be ready for the truth of what awaited me in the darkness? I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the cold metal of the door handle. The voice echoed in my mind, "Help us." My heart thumped wildly in my chest. Curiosity battled with fear as I weighed my options. But an inexplicable urge to uncover the source of the whispers overpowered my reservations. With a deep breath, I turned the handle. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit hallway, so different from the sterile brightness of the rest of the hospital. It felt like stepping into another world. The air was thick, almost alive. The distant sound of the ball bouncing faded, but the atmosphere buzzed with something I couldn't identify. I stepped inside, the wooden floorboards groaning under my weight. A sense of foreboding wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering in and out of sight. I paused, straining to listen. The whispers returned, swirling around me, a melting pot of emotions: fear, hope, pain. "Help us." I followed the sound, heart racing. Each soft plea sent chills racing down my spine. The voices led me deeper into the wing. I glanced into a few rooms, quickly realizing they were empty. Desks lay abandoned, toys scattered, dust draped across every surface.
This was once a place of laughter and life. Then, I noticed a door slightly ajar at the end of the hallway. It was harder to see through the gathering shadows inside. I approached, my breath hitching. I pushed the door open, and a rush of cold air enveloped me. Inside was a small room, walls painted a faded blue. Crayon drawings adorned them, vibrant yet melancholic. A single bed sat against the wall, unmade. Next to it lay a tattered teddy bear. I picked it up, feeling the weight of its history. This was a child's space. My heart ached at the thought of the kids who had stayed here. I placed the bear back down, then turned my attention to the corner. A small wooden chest sat there, its surface covered in dust. I knelt down, my fingers shaking as I brushed it off. It creaked open, revealing a collection of old photographs. They were mostly faded, but one caught my eye. It was a picture of a little girl, her smile bright, hair pulled in pigtails. My heart sank. She looked eerily familiar. The longer I stared, the more my mind raced. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What if this was one of the children I once cared for? As panic set in, I heard the whispers again, now rising in volume and urgency. "Jonah, help us, please." I glanced around, fear clawing at my insides. The shadows shifted, and the air turned heavy. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me, plunging the room.
Into darkness. I fumbled for the door, but it was stuck. My breath quickened. I pressed against it, pushing with all my strength, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers became frantic, merging into a collective cry. My world narrowed into a tunnel of darkness, echoing with despair. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I turned, heart racing. That's when I saw her, the little girl in the photograph, standing in the shadows. But her face was twisted in sorrow, eyes pleading. "Help us," she repeated, and everything went silent. A hollow feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. Who was with me? What did they want? And why was I meant to help? I was trapped in a nightmare, caught between the past and the shadows that still lingered. I had to find a way out, but now I realized the truth was far more terrifying than I had imagined. The silence was suffocating. I could barely hear my own thoughts over the pounding in my chest. I looked back at the girl, and her expression hadn't changed. "Help us," she whispered again, her voice thin and fragile, almost breaking under the weight of despair. I took a cautious step towards her. Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. The shadows shifted, wrapping around her like a dark veil. She didn't answer, but stepped back, just enough to let me see what was behind her. Another figure emerged from the darkness, a boy, not much older than the girl. His eyes were wide, filled with a mix of fear and longing. I squinted, trying to decipher their features, but the darkness obscured everything. I felt trapped in a nightmare, and dread settled over me like a storm cloud. "Are you real?" I asked, my heart racing. "Please, tell me what you want." The girl looked at the boy, and then back at me, her brow furrowed. "We can't leave," she said, her voice trembling. "No one can, not without help." "What do you mean? Help with what?" Panic crept into my voice. I didn't understand. The shadows seemed to pulsate around me, and the air grew colder. The boy stepped forward. "You have to find the key. It's the only way." Those words echoed in my mind. A key? What key? I hadn't seen anything in this room, except for the photographs and the teddy bear. I felt a flicker of hope, but then it got swallowed by dread. If I didn't help them, would they become trapped like I was? Would I join them in this nightmare? The whispers returned, an urgent chorus of voices. "The key, the key, the key," they chanted. I could feel the walls closing in. I struggled against the door again, desperation flooding my senses.
Please, I shouted, let me out. The girl stepped closer, her eyes piercing through the darkness. You can't leave, not yet. The key is here. She gestured to
the walls, the faded crayon drawings coming alive for a brief moment before slipping back into shadow. I turned, desperate to see what she meant. My hands brushed against the cool surface of the wall. There had to be something. I felt for cracks, loose boards. My fingers trembled as they traced the edges of the drawings, but nothing gave way. Then I noticed it. A small indentation in the wall where a drawing of a key was etched in bright yellow crayon. I pressed against it, half expecting nothing to happen. But as I pushed, the shadows flickered, and I felt a rush of energy surge through the room. The door trembled behind me, a glimmer of light spilling in from the edges. It was as if something was shifting. "You're close! You have to keep going," the boy urged. My heart raced. Was this it? Was I finally going to escape? I glanced back at the children, their faces now filled with hope. I needed to find that key. I needed to understand. "Where is it?" I asked, meeting their gaze. But before they could answer, the room shook, and the whispers became a deafening roar. "Find it! Find it now!" I had no time to waste. I needed to act. As the shadows pressed in, I turned and ran to the wall, searching for anything that could lead me to their freedom, and my own. I pressed my hand against the wall again, the etched drawing of the key feeling oddly warm beneath my fingertips. "What do I do now?" I breathed, hoping one of them would know. The boy's eyes darted around, frantically searching the shadows. "Push harder!" he shouted. "It's a secret door. You have to—" Before he could finish, the ground shook violently beneath me. I stumbled, trying to keep my balance, as the shadows writhed like living things. I could hear the whispers. They were louder now, almost angry, swirling around me like a storm. "Find it! Find it now!" Heart pounding, I pressed my palm against the key drawing and leaned my weight into it. I felt the cold wall shift, a frightened gasp escaping my lips as a section of the wall groaned. Then, with a sudden snap, a panel swung open, revealing a dark hallway beyond. There was just enough light spilling from the opening to highlight a figure at the end of the corridor, a tall shadow, looming and indistinct. My stomach dropped as the whispers morphed into a cacophony of frantic warnings. "Get back! Run!" I hesitated, glancing back at the kids. They were staring wide-eyed, their faces pale. "You have to go," the girl urged, desperation clawing at her voice. "The hallway can lead you out." I nodded, the fear in my throat constricting as I stepped through the door. The chill in the air slapped against my skin as I entered the corridor, and I turned back, just in time to see the panel snap shut behind me. Plunging the room back into darkness, I pushed forward, heart racing. The hallway was long and narrow, the walls lined with peeling wallpaper that whispered secrets of its own. I could barely hear over the pounding of my heart, but somewhere in the distance I could hear the faint echo of laughter mixed with the urgency of the whispers. "Find the key! Find the truth!" I moved cautiously, the dim light flickering intermittently, casting eerie shadows that danced like hesitant ghosts. Then I heard it, the sound of soft footsteps echoing behind me. I froze, heart in my throat. I turned slowly, prepared to confront whatever it was. But nothing was there. The laughter was gone, replaced by the dreaded silence that made every hair on my body stand on end. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Only silence answered, a heavy and suffocating quiet that felt alive. I pressed on, my instincts screaming at me to run. But I had to know what lay ahead. The kids were counting on me. Just as I approached a turn in the hallway, I spotted something glinting in the dying light. A key-shaped pendant hanging from a broken chain. My breath caught in my throat. That had to be it. I rushed to pick it up, my fingers brushing the cool metal.
The moment I touched it, the shadows writhed again, suddenly alive. A low growl echoed through the corridor. "You shouldn't have done that." Instantly, the shadows coalesced, forming a sinister figure. Humanoid, but distorted, eyes burning with an otherworldly light. I stumbled back, heart racing. Now it was clear. I was not alone. And whatever this was, it wasn't happy about my discovery. The whispers returned, louder and more frantic. "Run! It's waking up! Run!" I turned to flee down the corridor, adrenaline surging through my veins. I had to escape, to get back to the kids, if they were still waiting for me. The darkness was closing in, the air heavy with suspense. And as I ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being hunted. I dashed down the hallway, the sound of my sneakers slapping against the peeling floor echoing in the confined space. The growl from the shadowy figure lingered in my mind, tightening my chest. I couldn't stop thinking about those glowing eyes. I forced myself to look ahead, my pulse thumping in my ears like a drum. "Find the truth," the whispers hissed again, faster now, almost taunting me. I had to figure out what they meant. As I ran, the corridor began to twist and turn. Each corner I rounded made me feel more disoriented. I pressed forward, hoping I was still heading in the right direction, but dread crept in. What if I was just running deeper into the darkness? Then I heard it again, a shuffle behind me, louder this time. I glanced over my shoulder. The shadow was following, barely visible at the edge of the flickering light. I didn't have time to think. I pushed myself harder, lungs burning as I sprinted past doors that lined the hallway, some ajar, some shut tight. I could hear whispers behind them, murmurs that seemed to beckon me closer. I resisted the urge to stop. I couldn't get distracted. "Find the key," the voices urged. Suddenly, I skidded to a halt. Ahead of me stood an imposing door, its surface decorated with intricate carvings, similar to the one in the room where I found the key pendant. This door looked different, more ancient, almost alive with energy. I stepped closer, feeling drawn to it despite the fear flooding my thoughts. But then, the air shifted. I felt it before I heard it. The shadowy figure was gaining on me, and with it, the growl grew more pronounced. I turned back just in time to see it emerge from the dim light, stretching its arm toward me. My heart raced. Instinctively, I reached for the wall beside me, searching for anything to help me escape. "Open!" I shouted, panic laced in my voice as I shoved against the heavy door. To my surprise, it pushed inward with a creak, revealing a room cloaked in darkness. I stepped in, barely glancing back before slamming the door shut. I leaned against it, chest heaving. The whispers softened to a faint hum behind the door, leaving only silence within. I quickly scanned the room. It was small, filled with old furniture covered in dust. Dim light seeped through the cracks in the boarded-up windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Then something caught my eye. A flickering candle atop a table in the center. This wasn't just an empty room. I stepped closer, the eerie glow illuminating something familiar. It was another key, larger and more ornate than the pendant. I reached for it, but just as my fingers brushed the cool metal, the floorboards creaked loudly. I whipped around. The door rattled violently, the shadow outside pounding against it. My breath caught in my throat, realizing I hadn't escaped at all. My grip tightened on the key as I turned back to the candle. "Please," I whispered, "let this work." The door shuddered, and the whispers became a chorus of alarm. I had to make a choice: hold on to hope or confront whatever waited behind that door. The pounding continued. I had to act fast. The key might be my only chance. I hesitated, the key feeling cold and heavy in my palm. The relentless pounding echoed like a drum in my ears. Sweat trickled down my back, making the tense silence all the more unbearable. What if opening the door meant facing something worse? But the whispers had changed. Now they felt urgent, almost desperate. "Use it! Use it!" they chanted. I glanced back at the door. I could almost visualize the shadow lurking just beyond, its glowing eyes boring into me. With a deep breath, I turned my attention back to the key. Perhaps it held the answer to
everything. It shimmered in the candlelight, its intricate designs swirling like the secrets I desperately needed to uncover. I could almost hear them calling to me, and I felt a surge of courage. The pounding continued. I was running out of time. I rushed to the door, pressing the key against the lock. I hesitated for just a moment, pausing to gather my thoughts. There was no going back now. I had to push through. "Okay, here goes nothing," I murmured. I turned the key, a satisfying click resonating in the heavy air. The door swung open. My heart dropped as a cold gust rushed in, extinguishing the candle we'd almost depended on. I stumbled back, fear gripping me like a vice. Everything plunged into darkness. "Don't let it find you!" A voice sliced through the shadows, high-pitched and frantic. I felt around in the murkiness, my fingertips grazing the rough surface of the door. In the distance, I heard something moving. My instincts screamed to retreat, but my curiosity pulled me forward. I had to know what lay in wait. "Follow the light," the whispers urged, soft and melodic now. I furrowed my brow, focusing on a faint glow somewhere in the murky distance. It flickered like a candle, beckoning me to draw closer. I pushed away my fear. This could be it, the truth I was searching for. "Just stay quiet," I told myself. The last thing I needed was to alert the shadow. I stepped carefully, listening for every creak of the floor, every whisper of air. I moved toward the glow, inching along the wall until I could see more clearly. There, amidst the surrounding darkness, I spotted an old lantern resting on a table. It flickered vacantly, as if waiting for someone to breathe life into it. Then I heard it again, the growl. It was low and menacing, closer than before, cutting through the darkness like a knife. My heart pounded, and I fumbled to grab the lantern. If I could light it, I might be able to chase the shadow away. With trembling hands, I struck a match against the rough surface of the table. The flame flickered to life, illuminating everything around me. But as the light expanded, I realized I wasn't alone. Standing in the corner was the shadow, solidifying with the glow of the lantern. It had no eyes to see, but I felt its intent, dark, hungry. In that moment, I understood. I had walked straight into its den. "Run!" the voices screamed. I dropped the match and raced for the door, but it was too late. The shadow lunged, and I was trapped, the light flickering as if trying to hold back the darkness that now surrounded me. The shadow lunged at me, its dark form stretching to fill the space. I backed away, my heart racing. Where was the door? The flickering lantern barely pushed the encroaching darkness back, but I felt its grip tightening. "Stay calm," I whispered to myself. "Breathe." I spun around, scanning the darkness for an escape. The growl echoed, growing louder, vibrating through the air. Panic surged, and a surge of adrenaline propelled me forward. I had to find another way out. The floor beneath my feet creaked ominously as I took a step back. I felt the cold air crawling over my skin, prickling every nerve. The faint glow of the lantern illuminated a narrow corridor branching off to my left. Without thinking, I darted toward it. The shadows flickered behind me, but I didn't dare look back. My feet pounded against the floor, the sound swallowing any lingering sounds of the growl. The corridor stretched longer than I had expected, the walls closing in as I ran, pressing me toward the center of an unseen maze. "Where are you going?" A voice beckoned from the darkness, smooth and taunting. It sent chills down my spine. "You can't escape." I picked up my pace, the pulse of fear driving me. I moved blindly, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Just before I turned the corner, I spotted another lantern on the wall, its glass casing cracked but hopeful. I grabbed the matchbook from my pocket, my hands shaking as the fire danced on the tip of the match. The light burst forth again, casting long shadows that flickered like restless spirits. As the illumination grew, I noticed the hallway was lined with doors, each one sealed tight. My breath quickened, and I pressed my back against the wall, fighting the urge to collapse. "Open one," the voice whispered, its tone now seductive. "There's something behind them, something you want." No, I shook my head, trying to block it out. I couldn't let it sway me. I had to keep moving, had to push through. But as I stepped past the doors, one caught my eye, a brass handle glinting in the dim light. There was no denying it. It felt different from the others, almost alive. Whatever was behind that door had a pull I couldn't ignore. "Just a peek," I whispered, as if trying to convince myself rather than the shadow lurking just out of reach. My curiosity gnawed at me. I approached the door slowly, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. "Don't!" the frantic voice returned, slicing through my thoughts like glass. "You'll regret it!" I hesitated, only for a moment, my hand hovering over the handle before turning it. The door creaked open, and a wave of cold air swept out, wrapping around me like a noose. Inside, darkness enveloped everything, but I could see shapes moving within. My breathing hitched. Then I saw it. A figure standing against the deep void of the room, illuminated partially by the flicker of my lantern. That's when I realized it wasn't just a shadow. A chill coursed through me as the figure stepped into the light, and the door slammed shut behind me, locking me in this newfound horror. I backed away. From the figure, my heart racing anew as it emerged more fully into the light. It was tall and shrouded in tattered fabric, its face obscured by a hood. I could barely make out the gleam of what looked like pale skin beneath the shadowy folds. The lantern's flicker caught its gaze. Not eyes like mine, but glimmers of darkness that seemed to suck in the light around them. The air grew heavier, wrapping around me like a thick fog. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure tilted its head, as if considering my question, then stepped closer, silence enveloping us both. I glanced at the door, but it stood steadfast, an impenetrable barrier to my escape. "You seek answers," the figure stated, its voice smooth yet hollow, echoing like a forgotten memory. I shivered, unsure if it was offering help or danger. "You've come to the right place." I shook my head, anxiety flooding my chest. "No, this can't be happening." The words spilled out, frantic and disjointed. "I need to leave." It raised a hand, cloaked in darkness, and pointed toward the shadows behind it. "Beyond this door lies what you fear the most. But it is also what you need to understand." "What do you mean?" I took another step back, my hands tremoring. "I don't want anything from you." "Then why did you come?" The figure loomed closer, the edges of its shroud swirling as if caught in an unseen wind. My resolve wavered in the oppressive atmosphere. "Your heart betrays you," it continued, as if reading my thoughts. "You long for the truth." I had no answer to that. The truth? What truth could possibly be behind those shadows? All I felt was dread.
I thought of the growls, the whispers, the heavy darkness that chased me. I didn't want to face any of it. "Stay back!" I shouted, brandishing the lantern like a weapon, though I knew it would do little against the entity before me. "Fear only cloud your vision," the figure replied, its voice dropping to a whisper. "Within the shadows you shall find clarity. You simply need to let go." And then it happened. The shadows behind the figure began to shift and coil like serpents, reaching out to me as if alive. I stumbled back, terror ripping through me. Weren't shadows just that? Everything that was not light? Why could they feel so threatening? I turned and yanked on the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. I slammed my shoulder against it, desperation clawing at my chest. It felt as though the entire room was closing in. A strange sound came from the corner of the room, a soft, melodic hum that made my skin crawl. It mixed with the growling noises from before, creating a haunting symphony that resonated deep within me. My heart beat faster as the figure stepped closer, the shadows swirling around it with an almost hypnotic grace. "Do not fear the darkness,"
it whispered. "Embrace it." The light from my lantern flickered ominously. I felt the presence of whatever was in those shadows reaching out to me, a pulse of urgency wrapping around my very being. Just then, everything went dark. A wave of cold washed over me, and the lantern went out completely, leaving me in a silence that pressed against my ears. I was left alone to confront the darkness that loomed both around and within me. I stood in the suffocating darkness, panic clawing at my throat. I fumbled for the lantern, hoping to turn it back on, but all I felt was the cold metal of the handle. My breath came in short gasps, echoing in the silence that swallowed me whole. Then, from the depths of the shadows, I heard it again. Whispers. They were soft at first, like rustling leaves, but slowly they built into unintelligible murmurs. My mind raced. Were they speaking to me? I strained to listen, hoping to catch a word, a name, anything that could lead me back to safety. "Why are you here?" One voice cut through the rest, clearer than the others. It sent dread spiraling through me. "You shouldn't have come." "Who are you?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling. I felt completely exposed, like being in a room full of eyes. "An echo of the past," the voice replied, almost sing-song in its pattern. "We linger where you fear to tread." I took a step back, each footfall heavy with uncertainty. I needed to move, to breathe, but the shadows felt alive, encroaching upon me. Were they mere illusions, or was there something darker at play? Around me, the whispers intensified, blending into a cacophony of sound that filled the void. It was overwhelming, a disorganized mess of voices vying for my attention. But one voice broke through, persistent and maddening. "Find what was lost," it urged. "It's right here." "What do you mean?" I shouted, desperation rising within me. The whispers halted, as if taken aback by my defiance. I felt the weight of their silence, heavy and expectant. In that stillness, I thought about what I had been searching for. Answers, yes. But what was the question? What was lost? The shadows seemed to strain towards me, as if urging me to remember something buried deep. That's when I saw it, a faint glimmer through the oppressive darkness. It was a flicker of light, not from my lantern, but something else, deeper in the shadows. Hope surged within me. Maybe it was an exit, or some piece of clarity among the chaos.
Turning towards it, I felt the remaining darkness twitch and pulse as if it were alive. I pressed forward, emboldened by the prospect of escape. But with every step, the whispers returned, rising in pitch, each individual voice demanding to be heard. "Get out! Leave now!" they cried, their urgency wrapping around me. I hesitated, unsure of whether to heed the warnings or follow the
light that beckoned me forward. Suddenly, the figure re-emerged from the darkness, moving swiftly between me and the glimmer. Its hood concealed its face, but I felt those dark glimmers from earlier boring into me, reading my very soul. "Why are you resisting?" it asked, taunting and smooth. "Are you not curious about what lies ahead?" "What lies ahead?" I countered, my fear morphing into a fierce need for answers. "What are you hiding?" The shadows twisted behind the figure, a roiling mass threatening to engulf me entirely. I had to decide fast. Would I push forward into the unknown, or retreat back into the comfort of ignorance? "Make your choice," the figure intoned, the darkness swirling faster, closing in. "But know that the truth has a price." With that, I felt my heart skip a beat. I was running out of time. I took a step back, the weight of my decision crawling over me like the shadows closing in. The figure loomed, darkness swirling around it like a storm, pressing me toward the glimmer of light that beckoned from within the depths of fear. "What price?" I demanded, feeling a surge of defiance rising within my chest. "What do you want from me?" "Only what you hold dear," it replied, its voice soft yet filled with unsettling certainty. "The truth reveals all, but it demands a sacrifice in return." The whispers escalated, a buzz of warnings laced with urgency. I felt their desperation, their need to be heard. But was I really ready to confront whatever lay ahead? Images of my life flickered through my mind, memories of laughter, warmth, and love, interspersed with the chilling silence of that hospital. Would finding the truth force me to confront my past failures as a nurse? My heart raced. "Find the light," a soft voice echoed amongst the whispers, mingled with a haunting refrain of "Help us." The stratum of emotion swirled around me, anger, regret, sorrow. But what could I do? If the truth required a price, could I afford the cost? Frustrated and confused, I made a choice. I turned away from the pressing darkness and headed toward the glimmer. Each step met with rising whispers urging me forward. The shadows lunged, tendrils reaching for me, but I refused to turn back. The light pulsed rhythmically, each beat seeming to synchronize with my own racing heart. Suddenly, the light exploded, filling the room with clarity. I shielded my eyes, a welcoming warmth washing over me. In that moment, I understood my path. I stepped forward, feeling the shadows recoil, their power waning against the brilliance surrounding me. As I stepped fully into the light, I gasped. I found myself standing in the small room where I first encountered the children, a place of innocence and laughter. The tattered teddy bear remained on the floor, untouched, but as I swooped down to pick it up, I noticed something shimmering in its paw, a small antique key. In that moment, the whispers returned, only now they seemed filled with relief rather than urgency. "Thank you," echoed through the air as I held the key tightly in my palm. The children's faces appeared in the layers of light, their smiles comforting, yet tinged with lingering sadness. I could still feel their presence, that aching pull for help that had brought me here. I looked around the room. There was nowhere left to run. The shadowy figure had vanished. But the weight of what I needed to do kept pressing on my heart. Could the key be the answer, or was it another fragment of the past I had to face? I drew a breath, feeling the warmth wrap around me like a blanket, and turned toward the exit. Just before I stepped through the doorway, I glanced back at the room. Those crayon drawings on the walls,
the laughter of the children echoing faintly. I would carry them with me, and though I could escape the darkness, the longing for resolution would remain. I awakened hours later in the hospital, back at the nursing station. The fluorescent lights glowed above me, seeming less ominous than before. I found myself staring at the empty pediatric wing, wondering about the whispers I had encountered and what they truly meant. But were they mere voices or spirits trapped in the fabric of reality? Days turned into weeks, and I moved on in life, returning to some semblance of normalcy. Yet I couldn't help but think about the children, the laughter I once heard echoing through empty halls. I kept the key in my pocket, a reminder of my journey and the choices I made. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the faintest hints of laughter drifting through the corridors. I wonder if it is just memories lingering, or a deeper truth waiting to be uncovered. One thing is for certain, I can no longer view the world the same. It's filled with specters and echoes, incarnations of forgotten truths that tug at my heart. I may never fully comprehend the separation between darkness and light, but I now know that some things are best left with questions lingering in the shadows.